I'm Lee, and this is Scribble Mouse Customs. Start off with a little bit about me. I'm non-binary, and I use they/them pronouns. Today, I'm going to be making Dawn from Pokémon to kind of celebrate the release of Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. I'm going to be customizing this Jessie Cake Kindy Kids doll, so we're going to be making the chibi version of her that a lot of people seem to either love or hate. This is going to be a pretty long video, so buckle up. So this is actually the second Kindy Kids doll custom I've done. I'll be uploading the other video a bit later, but basically I originally used this doll as a test to figure out how exactly to take them apart for customization. First, I tackled the eyes, heating the vinyl around them with a hairdryer. Once the vinyl was soft enough, I shoved a cut-in-half Q-tip underneath the base of the inset eyes to help pop them out. Later on, I also used a screwdriver. Anything works really, so long as you can get it underneath the inside eye and have enough leverage to pop it out. Here I tried to see if I could split the eyes apart so I wouldn't have to make them from scratch, and there will be a lot more of that later. So if you want to see how I did the eyes, just keep watching. I didn't record this next part on the Jessie Cake doll, but I do have it for this other doll that I'll release a video of later. So now it's time for the hair removal. First, I sectioned off her hair and cut it so I can hopefully use it on another doll later. With the plug removal, I couldn't really remove the head as it's on a bobble mechanism rather than a neck peg. I tried heating around the plastic bit at the bottom of the head that holds the vinyl in place, but ended up just having to do brain surgery and cutting a hole in the back of her head. I cut it with little tags on the end to make it easier to fit back in the correct spot later. Then I scraped out the massive amount of plugs with my pliers and filled the doll's head up with water every so often to help wash out any of the plugs that I couldn't reach. Next, I removed her face paint with 100% acetone. I always forget whenever I go to remove the factory paint that it's easier if you really saturate the cotton pad, so I tend to end up smearing it all over the face before I remember that. I tried to remove this thing on her back, but started damaging the plastic, so I decided to just leave it. After that, I painted her head a similar color to her hair so that if there are any holes in the reroot, it's not as noticeable. This was my first time working with synthetic doll hair. I crochet a lot, so I have a bunch of yarn and tend to make my own yarn wefts, but for this big of a doll it would have taken too much energy to also make the hair myself. Dawn's hair is kind of like a dark blue / sometimes a grayish color, so it was kind of hard to decide which route to go with for the hair. In the end, I decided on this dark denim color from the Doll Planet. Because I'd never used synthetic hair before, I really had no idea how much I need, but I messaged the people who own the shop and they were really helpful. I told them I was trying to reroot a Kindy Kids doll head, and they said it would probably take around 7 of the 1 ounce bags, which ended up being almost exactly right. They were super fast at responding, so thank you to them. They also kind of warned me it'd be pretty difficult to reroot the Kindy Kids doll head, as the vinyl for them is very tough, which was absolutely correct. I had already tested out the head with my Rerooting Tool and found that a combination of heating the head, then stabbing a preliminary hole with a needle, and then inserting the Rerooting Tool worked pretty well. By the end of it though, I didn't really need to heat the head and kind of just went ham with the needle, which was good enough. This reroot goes along for a while, so I guess I'll talk about more of what led me to do this custom. Like I said earlier, Jessie Cake was more of a practice destruction doll for another custom. I was really set on using the Kindy Kids dolls since it fit the proportions of the other character I was customizing perfectly, and I thought it'd be a fun challenge. So anyways, I had this blank canvas just sitting around for a while and didn't know what to do with it. Eventually I realized that her proportions almost exactly matched the chibi Dawn that everybody was freaking out about for Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Not gonna lie though, I was actually more of a Digimon kid. I did watch the anime that had Dawn in it, so she's a bit of a nostalgic character in that sense, but to this day I'm like a worse Pokemon nerd, because most of my Pokemon knowledge actually comes from playing Pokemon and Pokemon Mystery Dungeon RPGs. To this day, I've only really finished Pokemon Shield. For some reason, I tend to just get distracted whenever I get to the Elite Four in anything. Eventually though, I will actually beat a game. Hopefully that will be whichever version of this I end up getting, since my friends got me really into Pokemon. Getting back to the custom in this video, this is actually the 6th custom I've done. It's also the one with the most footage so far taken with an actual camera and not my phone. When I was starting out, I mostly took time lapses with my phone, which is why some of the footage at the start is pretty fast. I got a real camera before I started working on this doll in earnest though, so I figured I'd start this channel out with Dawn because the new games were being released soon, and it would also be a good thing to start out with better video quality. After this, for the next couple of dolls, I only have time lapses, so the other videos are going to be a good deal shorter than this. Then the quality will go back up, so please hang in there if you decide to watch my other videos. Even though the heads were really tough, the biggest struggle, which was probably pretty obvious from the start, was just the sheer size of the head, which was massive. I was able to go off on like a 3-paragraph tangent while this has just been going in the background, and I probably haven't even gotten through a good chunk of this video, so at this point I'll just... yeah, 32 hours and 45 minutes. That's a lot. I worked on it over the course of a couple weeks, so it wasn't like all at once, but when I originally did the math, I thought it was 27 hours. Then I found a bunch of other footage I forgot to catalog and realized, nope, it's 32 hours. Yeah, Jesus Christ. Also after this, I said I wasn't gonna do another big doll, and immediately started working on a Disney animated doll, so that's how well that statement held up. Anyways, after rerooting around her hairline and part, I did a little bit of a lighter reroot for the rest of her head as it was a lot of hair. I went through, I think, 5 needles, but that's on me because by the end I stopped doing the prep that I should have for the needle to go in easier. While I was working, I wrapped her head in a towel to help contain some of her hair while I worked on the rest of the reroot. After all that, I secured the hair in place by brushing around the inside of the head with Fabri-Tac. I also brushed the back portion of the patch that I cut out, so don't forget to reroot that portion if you try to do something like this on a Kindly Kids doll. Then I superglued the piece of vinyl back into place. Kindly Kids' eyes are made up of a plastic white base with circles on the back that help position them in the eye socket. Then an overlaying clear plastic piece that has the pupil design painted on it. In between those, there's a glitter sticker that makes the eye color. These eyes gave me a lot of trouble, so here's a series of attempts I made at recreating them. First, I made the silicone molds of one of the eyes that I was able to split apart. I tried to cast my own clear eye tops and bases with resin, but I wasn't satisfied with any of the clarity of the resin pieces as they all had a matte finish, and I wasn't great at sanding and polishing yet. If you are though, this method might work for you. So then I took the design I made for her pupil and I tried to form it around the resin eye parts, which also just looked bad. So I went back to trying to take apart more of the original eyes. Eventually, I was able to split apart the base and the clear plastic by gradually cutting around the inside of the white plastic base to help separate it from the clear portion. I cut off some of the tags on the base to help make it easier for me to get my X-Acto blade in between the plastic. This process gave me a lot of anxiety though, because I really don't like sharp things, so that much involvement with the X-Acto blade made me nervous. The X-Acto method also only really worked a couple of times. So with the eyes split apart, the next problem I encountered was removing the paint from the clear plastic. As cute as the snack-themed eye highlights of the Kindy Kids were, they didn't match the characters I was trying to make. If you want to have a different pupil design, use a small amount of acetone and a lot of patience to slowly take off the paint on the clear plastic. The plastic gets cloudy very easily, so it's best to go as slow as you can. I ended up clouding some of the eyes that I was working with, and between my attempts at sanding and polishing them, it just got worse. And I realized I needed more eyes. Luckily, I was able to find a doll lot of extremely used Kindy Kids dolls somehow, so I was able to replace the ones that I destroyed. And I also got more dolls in the process, so yay. The system that worked best for me in the end was to chip away at the connection between the clear plastic and the base with an X-Acto blade, then wedge a small flat-headed screwdriver into the gap you made. It helps if you have assistance with this next part, because one person holds the eye still while the other then drives the flat-headed screwdriver further into the plastic by hitting it with a hammer. Eventually you get far enough to have the leverage to pop the eye apart with minimal scratching. Then it's just a matter of slowly taking the paint off with acetone and gluing or painting your new eye design onto the base. I drew this model, or this pupil in Photoshop real quick and printed it in various sizes on computer paper. Then I used Mod Podge to attach it to the base. Keep in mind the tags on the base when you are positioning the eyes, so that they'll look correct in the socket later. After that's done, let the eyes dry so you don't get any clouding from the moisture on the clear part. Once dry, I use super glue around the edges of the pieces and sandwich them together. I probably should have just positioned the paper on the base first while the eye was in the socket to make sure it was in the right spot before super gluing them together. I ended up having some trouble later because of this. I've run into problems of face-up cracking on previous customs when putting heads back on the neck peg. And since I knew the Kindy Kids' eyes were really difficult to get in and out, I decided to insert them prior to doing the face-up. To keep the shiny appearance, I used a thin tape to secure embroidery thread around and across the eyes. This tape will protect the eyes from the UV matte spray, and you'll really only get a sticky residue which can be easily removed with soap and water, or Goo Gone. The embroidery thread acts as a tag so you can easily rip the tape and subsequently remove it once the face-up is done. Now it's time to do more prep for the face-up. I sectioned off her hair and heated the vinyl around the eyes to pop them back in. Make sure you match up the tags to their correct eye. I taped down the loose embroidery thread to make sure it doesn't get caught in the face-up, then pinned an old t-shirt sleeve around her hairline to protect the hair. I then put a ventilator mask on and sprayed the face with a couple layers of Mr. Super Clear. Then the surface is ready to be drawn on. Originally, I went into the face-up blind since I thought I knew what I wanted to do. I built up some minor blushing first with my chalk pastels. Then I sketched in the eyebrows with some blue pastel. I used a thread to try and align the eyebrows. I don't think it worked, but it sure felt like I was doing something. This is where everything really went wrong. I penciled in the waterlines and drew on some lashes, which I ended up absolutely hating. So I tried to keep going with it to salvage what I could, but I should have just stopped and saved myself the Mr. Super Clear. Hoping I could salvage some of my work, I tried to remove the lashes with acetone again, which just threw off the whole face. So I decided it was time to start over. Luckily, I was able to keep a lot of the built-up blushing on the lips without it being noticeable that I restarted. This time I went in with a plan. I sketched out this blueprint over a picture of the face in Procreate and went to work sketching it out on the doll. Once I was happy with it, I went in with my dark blue watercolor pencil and finalized the sketch. From there I used sharp, short strokes to fill in the brows. I added highlights with a white watercolor pencil, spraying the doll with another layer of Mr. Super Clear whenever I couldn't work more pigment into the current layer. I built up several layers of white over the teeth. Towards the end, I wanted to give her face some sparkles, so I started adding in layers of Pearl X powder in gold. It gives the doll a really glowy look that I love, so I really just ended up using it on the whole face. Towards the end, I also used some blue Pearl X powder to give some shine to her eyelashes. Once I was done, I went back in with some white acrylic paint to give more contrast to the highlights. It looked a little patchy at points, but eventually you reach a point where you just say good enough. Now it's time for the really exciting part. The eye reveal. I released the embroidery thread and pulled it around the eye to release the rest of the tape. It was at this point I realized I probably used too much tape. I could have gotten away with just doing a small layer around the eyes, and if I did, I wouldn't have had to use a screwdriver to try and scrape it out from the inside of the eyes. I also realized that one of the eyes was completely not positioned properly, so I had to remove it anyways and crack the face up. I removed the eye, split it apart, and put the base back into the eye. From there, I glued down a new eye pattern in the correct position. While this was drying, I glossed the lips, then put the clear portion back in, which did crack the face up. so I went in with more colored pencils and acrylic paint to patch the cracks. Then I finally decided I was done and moved on to the clothes. For her skirt, I decided to make it just a rectangle with a longer rectangle on the bottom that I would fold to get the pleats in her design. I had this cute pink shimmery fabric that I intended to use on a She-Ra Glimmer repaint, and will still use once I get to that project. After cutting out the pattern, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out the correct amount of space needed between the pleats to make them look even, and match the 8 pleats that Dawn has on her outfit. Once they're positioned where I want, I take it to the sewing machine and run a line across it, then another line to make sure it's secured in place. Next, I sewed in some darts to make the skirt balloon out a bit more instead of just sitting flat. Instead of hemming the top, I added a waistband made out of the same fabric. Then I cut a piece of interfacing out and iron it down to secure all the edges and make it look a bit cleaner. Finally, the final touch is adding in a couple of snaps for closures. And with that, the skirt is done. Now onto the shirt. I had a shirt pattern from the first Kinda Kids doll custom I did, so I traced that and modified it to match Dawn's shirt. These fabric scissors are long dead also, so if anybody wants to scream at me about using them on paper, please know that I have a separate pair of fabric scissors that I hide away. Her shirt ended up being made up of 6 pieces, 2 front panels and 4 back panels, that will be closable with a small snap. I don't own any fray checks, so I just secure the edges with a little bit of high gloss varnish. It makes the edges a little crusty, but it gets the job done and I don't mind it. I also just have so dang much of it. Originally, I did the shirt in just 3 pieces and tried to hem the triangle portions neatly. After many attempts, I realized it looked okay, but knew I could do better. So I cut out an extra piece of each pattern and sewed the triangles one on top of the other. Then I turned the fabric inside out and got a much nicer edge than on any of the previous versions. Finally, I secured a small portion of white fabric to some interfacing and cut out the white undershirt shape before sewing it into the V-neck. For the scarf, I used a similar method to the shirt, sewing the triangle bits together and then turning them inside out to get the shape I wanted. I inserted a wire into the scarf, securing it at intervals with red thread to prevent it from moving. And voila, posable scarf! For her hat, I scaled down a newborn's hat pattern and cut it out of this jersey knit fabric. I sewed it together and then added this pink Pokeball detail on with the same fabric I used for her skirt. I took a pair of Donatina's shoes and carved off the details with my X-Acto blade. I used Apoxie Sculpt to smooth out the shoes and then made the band detail with Crayola Model Magic. Then I primed the shoes with gesso and painted them with pink and white detailing. For the socks, I cut out strips of the stretchy black fabric, sewed up the backs, and glued them inside the shoes. Now on to accessories. I simplified her bag a bit, making it only have one strap. Then I made the pattern. This pattern is literally 2 circles, a rectangle, and a strap all cut out of yellow felt and secured with a functioning zipper. Off camera, I primed and painted the tag of the zipper silver. I secured the straps to the zipper and then pinned the sides of the bag together. I cut slits in the circle to help them fold down easier and sewed it all in place. Repeat for the other side and turn the bag inside out. I really love how it looked, but I decided it was a little bit plain, so I sketched out a Pokeball and painted it on each circle part with black paint. Her first bracelet was really easy. I took a couple of pearl beads and put them on gold wire, securing them in place by twisting the wire, then making a simple hook closure system. For her watch, I first cut a piece of white ribbon and sewed a snap closure on it. From there, I sculpted the main watch piece out of more Crayola Model Magic, which I then let cure for 24 hours. Honestly, I'm probably the most proud of the details on her watch. I was able to pull some really clean lines and was also really happy with the color saturation. I also made her a Pokeball that she could actually hold, sort of, by inserting looped wire into the ball. I was able to reuse my first attempt at a Pokeball and wrap pieces of white and red Model Magic around the ball in the half and half Pokeball pattern. I tried to paint the black part on, but realized I could get a better line and cover up the gap with a piece of construction paper. So, I cut a long rectangle out of black construction paper and molded it to the cured Pokeball with super glue. I saturated the paper with more high gloss varnish to make it easier to manipulate, while also making it a bit stickier. I did the same with a black circle cut out of construction paper, and finished it off with this white button from my previous Pokeball attempt. I brought out more of the color with white, black, and red paint. Then finally, I coated the whole thing in high gloss varnish to both seal it and make the Pokeball shiny. Throughout this, you've probably seen me working on the hair accessories. I formed these structures with Crayola Model Magic, then primed and painted them to be the correct shade of yellow. I decided to give them a coat of high gloss varnish for the heck of it. They will be secured to Dawn's hair with wire. Finally, she needs her first Pokemon partner, Piplup. I scoured the internet looking for a Piplup in a size that would work with this Dawn doll. I couldn't find any plushes that I liked for the scale, but found this wonderful quick model kit. It was super easy to assemble and looked really nice all put together. With Piplup done, it's time to release her hair for styling. We're so close to done, guys, holy crap. First, I sectioned off the front portions of her hair and secured them with the accessories. Then I pulled the long portions of her hair at the front of her temple back and over the skull into a ponytail. I also secured this with another length of wire. From there, it was just a matter of trimming it down to what I wanted. I really love how her hair turned out, and honestly, I really didn't have to do much styling other than trimming and heating the hair with a blow dryer to help it adjust to its new shape. For the bangs, I also heated my metal plier with an iron and flattened them down. And with her bangs trimmed and styled, it's finally time to assemble the full doll. And here she is in all her glory. I'm so happy with how she turned out. It was a lot of work, but it was worth it since she turned out so dang cute. I really love her Pokeball in her watch, and I don't think I mentioned this when I was doing the eyes, but I'm also really proud of the little Pokeball detail that I put as the eye shine. If you've made it all the way through this video, thanks so much for watching. It was a good deal longer than I thought it'd be, mostly because this doll took so dang long to make. I'll be posting more videos soon though, that will likely be a good deal shorter since I only have very fast time-lapse footage for them. But I'm really happy with those dolls too, and can't wait for you to see them. After the next 4 videos, the quality will increase, so stay tuned for that. The songs used in this video are Ember and Hazy by Val Murray, otherwise known as Zodiac. Check out the credits for links to her work, as well as links to my Instagram and Twitter. Since this is on YouTube now, I guess I should probably figure out a sign off. For now, if you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next doll. Hope you have a great day. Bye!